So we want to talk about the economy. I think that's probably still what's mostly on people's minds. And I was reading today, again, about how Goldman Sachs had record profits this year, or certainly what they were equal to before the big crash.
Right.
Okay, so my question to an expert is, if the economy is so bad, where do these profits come from?
Well, the profits for these guys are coming from business as usual. That is, they are still selling, in the case, for example, of the big Wall Street banks, they're still selling a lot of consumer credit cards and mortgages and car loans and that sort of thing that they make big profits off. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum, Goldman Sachs in particular, they're still trading in all those fancy high-risk instruments that they traded in that brought us to the brink of economic collapse.
And that's what we need to reform?
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing?
No, I don't get to do that part.
Oh.
What I do is I get to oversee how Treasury spent money to bail out the big financial institutions. The question about whether or not we're going to change the rules is squarely with Congress. And that's not going so well.
And it always seems that we need the bank's permission to reform. We just can't do something because they're so fragile. You know, it's very... Isn't that the way it strikes you, that they're very emotional? They're like a girl with low self-esteem. That's what this economy reminds me of. It's okay now, but if we just say you're ugly, oh, she's going to just...
Well, you know, I really thought when I was here and the last time you and I talked that we were on the brink of real financial reform, that we were going to change the system, we were going to have a consumer agency to make sure that we kind of rolled back all the crazy abuses and the tricks and the traps.
You thought that?
I really did.
Boy, what do you smoke before the show?
I also thought that we would change the rules on things like derivatives and that we were going to change the rules on resolution authority, what we do with these big banks. We were going to get rid of too big to fail. The problems could not be more obvious. And quite frankly, the solutions are just about that obvious, but we can't seem to get the two together right now.
It does seem like I believe that there are smart people in the Obama administration. He picked you and a number of others, you know. I think they know what to do, but they just can't do it because, like I said, the banks are very fragile. They're very emotional. And if they come down on them, the market will drop like 2,000 points in a week. I mean, isn't that why Obama made such nice talk about the banks this week when he compared them to baseball players?
You know, I don't know why the president said what he said, but I'll make this part clear. The reason that we aren't changing things right now is the banks have lobbyists in Washington in numbers I've never seen. They're coming not just, you know, once a month, once a week, or even once a day. These guys are coming in 2 and 3 and 4 times a day. They're making phone calls. They've got their position papers, and they just keep slamming in the same direction over and over and over. And people who just want to advocate for American families, people who want some changes, who want to level the playing field, they just don't have that kind of lobbying power. And so what we're really watching here is a David and Goliath story of, it's just of monumental proportions.
You know, before the crash, I had most of my savings in Lehman Brothers.
Ah.
I don't have a question. I just want you to hold me. All right, I'm better. But, all right. So,
I mean, you did pick the one huge financial institution that was not too big to fail.
Yeah. But it did fail, and it's funny because, you know, I've been watching a little bit of the Olympics, and Lehman Brothers reminds me of that loser who died. You know, the loser, you know, it was tragic.
Yeah.
But, you know, he died, and it's not like they said, well, we got to fix the track. You know, this is ridiculous, having people slide down the side of a mountain on a sheet of ice at 100 miles an hour. They went right back to doing it, and it seems like that's what our economy is. That it's still as risky as it was before. We're still sliding down the mountain on a sheet of ice.
That's exactly right. In fact, when this crisis started in October of 2008, Secretary Paulson said the problem is there's too much concentration in the banking industry, meaning a handful of big banks that hold too much. What's happened is the banking industry has gotten more concentrated. He said we're worried about toxic assets on the books of the banks. In fact, we still have toxic assets on the books of the banks. We are worried about the financial products that are sold to consumers, the credit cards, the mortgages that are sold on a kind of tricks and traps basis. And that still happens every single day. Credit cards alone cost American families last year $120 billion in penalty fees, interest.
Right, that's not the stuff they bought. That's just what...
That's the interest.
Right.
That's right. 50 million American families can't pay off those
But wasn't there a bill that was passed last year?
Yes.
A credit card bill?
Yes.
When does that go into effect?
So it goes into effect Monday.
Monday?
Monday. And
That's why you're here. I knew there was something immediate we wanted to talk to you about.
There we go.
Right.
So it goes into effect Monday. And look, what it did is it outlawed basically 10 bad practices. The problem with the approach, and I'm glad they outlawed it. Look, there were really
Like what?
lousy, terrible practices, things like double cycle billing, you don't want to know, universal default, certain things you weren't going to be able to do, raising interest rates on what are called hair triggers. You're 1 hour late. They stopped those. But what happened is it's like putting fence posts on an open prairie. You know, you got 10 of them now. And if you smack straight into one, you really will get hurt. But if you want to hire just one lawyer, much less an army of lawyers, you just kind of could run a little to the left of it or a little to the right of it, and it's business as usual.
So as of Monday, will people find their life different as far as credit card goes? Or?
Well, there will be some differences, but as the Center for Responsible Lending now says, they've done an analysis of what's gone on, and they said of the 10 that have been outlawed, the credit card companies have already figured out 8 new devices for getting around them. And look, this is the whole point that I've been pushing for a consumer agency.
Sucks.
They move
The whole
fast.
country just sucks. It just sucks. And people just get screwed. Thank you for holding me.
Elizabeth Warren, everybody.